Good morning, everyone. We're going to get started in just a minute. This is our Dawn's Dialogue October webinar, and we've got a lot of great information, but we want to give everyone an opportunity to get logged in. So give us a couple minutes, enjoy this nice, relaxing jazz for some Friday morning centering here as we gear up for the weekend. So welcome again. We'll get started in just a minute. All right, people are filing in. Again, just give us about one more minute here, and then we will go ahead and get started. We had about 150 registered, so we'll see if we can get a third of that in before we get launched here.
Sorry for my yelling.
It was a laugh yell. It was both.
It was a laugh yell. It was wholehearted. It was honest, real.
Yeah. Well, I say it's 10:03 and we've got a ton of information to cover this morning, so people will kind of file in. We are recording this webinar. It'll be posted on my YouTube page later and linked out in the APC newsletter. So for those of you that are on, if you know of someone who hasn't joined yet but will be but joins a little late, you can always point them to the video afterwards. But we're going to go ahead and get started. We have a full agenda this morning. We're going to kick off with our wonderful librarian, Ms. Burkhalter, who is going to share about some library resources this morning. And then we'll spend a significant amount of time talking about what the flood of questions that have come in about being in the red and students starting to return to campus. We're also going to hear from Ms. Powers about our October cohort updates with a share out about that and our bias incident reporting updates. So you'll get to hear about, this is our new system for reporting bias incidents. So you'll get to hear about that. And then we'll also do a really quick overview of our California Healthy Kids survey. This was going to be a majority of our Dawn's dialogue today, but we, just with everything going on about in-person returning to school and hybrid model, we really felt like we wanted to dedicate a lot of time to that to get all of those questions answered. And then we'll do this quick highlight, and hopefully we'll have time later in the year where we can actually do a little bit more of an in-depth analysis and share out of the California Healthy Kids survey. I thought it was funny because when I was talking with our fabulous APC co-presidents who help facilitate the webinars, I was like, let's do an in-depth analysis of the California Healthy Kids survey. And they were like, I don't know if that's the most interesting content for people right now, which I totally agree and was appreciative for that feedback. And then there's going to be an option at the end for some Q&A for people. So we, of course, have to start with our quarantine meme of the month. I thought I would do a little throwback to my childhood. I loved Back to the Future growing up, and this was something that I think if they were writing the movie now, this would probably be a line from the movie, never go to 2020. So I hope that brings a little smile to your face this Friday morning. With that, I'm going to actually stop sharing my screen, and I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Burkhalter, who is our school librarian and who has been really doing a ton of work during distance learning to help our staff members and our students connect to all of the fabulous resources that the library provides. So Ms. Burkhalter, take it away.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I'm really happy to be here, talked about the resources we have, and all being online for the most part. and have always been an important resource for students, even when we were on campus, but has become even more an important part of classroom support while in remote learning. And so I just kind of wanted to show you where it is. The students, for the most part, know how to get there. Freshmen are learning. Usually they would come down to the library, often with world history class, but I've been going to world history classes or world history academies and helping them with this. But I'm just gonna start with the library page to show you briefly. And to get here, I usually always do this with the students, even the seniors, start on the school website. It's under academics, or to the side, there's a little shortcut of a book to library, and it ends up here. I'm kind of on the edit mode. Let me just go to this one. This will look a little better. Okay. And we have the election simulation project, which we've been doing for 2 years. This is our 3rd year, that I have front and center, of course, because students are registering to vote for it if they want to be part of the simulation. And it's kind of an abridged ballot they get, and they get to cast their vote. And I also, in that vein, have information on the website for students who are 18 or ones who want to be poll workers, and they can do that there. And then I would change out this information after November 3rd and put something else front and center. Right here, I've put in some remote learning links that will take to the database page so that the students, when they land here, can immediately go where they need to be. Usually I wouldn't have this on there. They'd go by the tab, so you can see at the top there. But I just wanted them to not be confused, since they wouldn't necessarily have their teacher to turn to immediately, say, wait, where is this? Database page is a really important one. Noodle Tools is the citation program that we use throughout the district that all the students have their own accounts to, and it's a really great way to do citations, and we've been pushing that for a while. All the librarians and the students are really getting very good at it and using it, and it integrates really great with all the databases, so it's very easy to use. And then I just have subject guides here. I'm not going to go to every single thing on here, but you can see sometimes I put on some screencasts. I just recently did this with the juniors. I've got things to the Contra Costa Library. And then if students want to put a book on hold, there's information here how they can put a book on hold in our catalog, and then they can come down and get a physical book to make an appointment to pick one up. So that's easy to do. And they can always just email me as well. And then just real briefly, I want to go over to the database page. And again, usually I would just have a short little thing up here, but I want them easily to get into it. I wouldn't generally publish our login information, but I want the kids to be able to find that. And once everyone's back on campus, that will be, they need to contact me. And then just some things that have been useful while in remote learning: access to ebooks through National Emergency Library. Mackin is another ebook place that has given some free access to. Of course, the public library, Stories by Audible. There are some free audiobooks to be had there. And then here are all our databases. And so that is just such a wonderful thing. And I can't tell students, teachers, and parents enough how lucky we are to have these, and how grateful we are to LPI and Parents Club for helping provide them. Most high schools don't have this much access, and I hear back from students after they've gone to college how great it was to have these, how they understand how to use their college ones, etc. And that's really about it. I have some more up here that people can look at on their own time when you want to go there. Lots of new books in the library that students can, again, make an appointment to get. And then we also have a page on some equity things, including books we have and such, to go along with our race and equity work this year. And then, of course, this election simulation project that we're working on through the rest of the month. Okay.
Ms. Burkholder, can you share because this is, parents on the call now, if there's one thing that these parents should highlight for their students later tonight or this weekend or next week, that about some of the library resources, what would you point them towards? Just like, hey, go on the website and play around, or is there something specific that you would say, like, if they know how to navigate this one thing, it's going to be super helpful for XYZ?
I would probably say it's different age level of different grades for the different databases, but just the databases, and they should know based on what their teachers has been working on, because some of them are sometimes still confused how to get there. And I know it's all new to the freshmen. So with freshmen, I'd say ABC Clio is a really great one. And many of your students will know that from world history, or at least ring a bell if you ask it. And then the Gale Biography and Context, Gale Science and Context, and the Literature Resource Center. So they're all Gale products, and they all work kind of similarly since they're by the same company. And those are all great for obviously the subject matter that is in their title. So I would say, yeah, if your students know how to get to the databases, that's probably the most important thing on there at this point.
Okay, great. I don't know if we had any questions come in about library stuff. Resources. Great. Well, Ms. Burkholter, really appreciate you taking the time this morning to share with us. And it is a really dynamic and engaging webpage that you've helped build and curate specifically for our students as related to the content that they're learning in their classes. So we appreciate your work. And if people need to reach out to you, your email address can be found right on the library webpage, yep. Correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Awesome, thank you. Well, you don't need to stay on as panelists, but you're welcome to. But that's why we had you go first, because I know you got a lot of other work to do. So I'm going to take back over people's screens now. And we are going to continue with, we're going to jump into talking about students returning. And I just want to highlight before we start, I'm really trying to present a balanced perspective on what this looks like. When people ask me about how work is going and what's going on with COVID and students on campus and distance learning, the first thing that really comes to mind for me is just how polarizing this experience has been. I know we feel it in our community. I feel it as a dad myself, and within my family and in the community that I live as well. And so I know many of you are experiencing this too. So I do want to just acknowledge that, and I'm gonna I want to try to present some steps that we're taking to return, but really ground us in some things that are really important. First off, the reason why we adjusted our Dawn's dialogue agenda to really spend some significant amount of time talking about this is because of our recent board meeting that happened last Wednesday. As we've moved into the red and are able to start bringing students back on campus, there was a lot of dialogue at the board meeting about what that looked like. And I think that sparked a lot of questions in the community about students returning on campus. So I want to point out for you there have been a flood of questions coming in, and I tried to synthesize all of the questions, and they've really come down to 2 questions that have come in my inbox. And many of you are probably seeing this. I've been sent so many screenshots of Nextdoor posts and Facebook posts and even Instagram posts that have gone out there, and they all have one of 2 themes. Either they say the first question, like, we're now in the red and we've been given the go-ahead, why aren't we in hybrid learning right now? Or the questions are on the other side where it's like, what's the hurry? We need to make sure that we're safe. And what do we do if someone actually gets COVID? So we're really feeling this dynamic extreme of people who are like, I'm ready to be fully open, let's get back to it, to people who are feeling still really cautious and timid about COVID and returning. So I wanted to ground us in this conversation on some really important reminders. First and foremost is the reminder about safety. This is both individual and collective, that it's a responsibility both for ourselves and our immediate circles to be mindful of how do we uphold the health and safety for ourselves to protect us and our families, but then also that collective responsibility about public health. And that's so much of what the dialogue has been about with the county health orders. The second thing that I really want to ground us in is making sure that we're keeping students at the center of the conversation. It has an impact for all of us. I know students returning to school as a principal, it impacts me, but it's about keeping the students at the center of the work. It also impacts my family with the options for my own children to return to school. Mr. Plant and Ms. Powers are the same with their kids returning as well. And then I really want to remind us that it is 100% okay to hold to really hold and honor and respect multiple perspectives, that people have their own truths, and that's okay. And let's see if we can really engage in a safe and supporting way where all perspectives are held with equal respect. This is some of the work that we're doing in our equity cohorts about how do we really hold multiple perspectives and allow people to speak from their own truth and their own experience, and at the same time stand firm in our own sort of experience and perspectives that we have. I also thought I would share with you that as we try to hold multiple perspectives, just know that I'm in it with you. This was literally last night. My daughter had to, she's in first grade, and she had to do this like monster writing project where she had to write from a narrative of a monster. And she wasn't told what the monster was to say. This was like her own, was her own writing. And just so you know, she's working on like how to make stories pop, and her teacher's teaching her how to like write in all caps and stuff. I'm like, I don't know if that's really like the ELA standards, but whatever, it doesn't matter. So she's writing from the perspective of the Frankenstein that she had to do, and you can read it there, but it talks about how Frankenstein does not like COVID. He hates, again, I don't know why she's writing in all caps, but that's a different conversation. He hates masks. He hates staying inside. He just wants to go to school. She spelled school wrong, which as a former English teacher, I'm offended. And he hates going on Zoom. So I'm living it at home with my daughter as well, but I also know that, so I hold that space, but I also know it has to be done in a way that's safe for our students, safe for our staff members, and safe for our community. So we are implementing some phases of returning, and this in-person learning really is to provide connection opportunities, and we have started with being really intentional about our students who really need to be on campus and receive some support, and that has already happened, which I'll talk about in just a minute. But all of our students and staff follow strict safety precautions. So anyone that comes onto our campus, we have signs up, there's hand sanitizers everywhere, masks are required. You'll notice we're not wearing them now because we're in our offices with the doors closed, but at any other time we have our masks on, and that's a requirement of everyone who comes on our campus. And we practice physical distancing. So even I'm using the admin team that's on here, Ms. Powers and Mr. Plant. When we meet, we're meeting in the collaboration center, and we're sitting 6 feet apart at this giant long table. We try to pretend like we're just a really wealthy family, and we sit at opposite ends of this giant dining room table. But we're meeting apart, and we're keeping that physical distance. The reason why we're doing this phase-in approach as we get closer and closer to a full hybrid model, which when we say hybrid, by the way, what we mean by that is that it's a combination of distance learning, which is what we're currently doing, and in-person instruction. So we're doing this phase-in approach because it's really going to help us lead to that full hybrid model. But I also want to acknowledge, before I continue kind of sharing what this process is going to look like, is there's always going to be an option during this, at least at the start, for families who just aren't comfortable sending students back to school for whatever the reason might be. And for those families, they would enroll their kid through our district in a distance learning program as we transition to hybrid. So there'll be more information coming on that as that gets closer. So I want to talk about these phases. Phase 1 is happening now. So this is in-person instruction for our most our students with the most need, and that is specifically our special education students who are in the essential skills classroom, learning life skills and need some of that additional support. It's significantly small groups, and it was optional for those students to return, but we're in our second week of that, of students returning. There's about 2 or 3 students at like hour intervals, although we see that potentially increasing next week to maybe 2-hour intervals. And we have a continuation of after-school sports camp cohorts that are happening. Technically, the sports camps aren't a school function, but it's a little bit of this interest convergence of trying to provide some opportunities for students. So that's why it's called a camp for our sports camps to return. So that's phase 1, and that's happening now. Phase 2 will launch some as early as next week, but over the course of the next 2 weeks, there will be intentional, targeted support of in-person learning for the following like categories. There'll be some after-school academic tutoring, after-school social emotional support, in-person academy intervention, and in-person academy social emotional support. We envision offering some quiet learning spaces to access technology. That's been one of the hardest parts when we know students have really spotty Wi-Fi, and we're hearing from these students who aren't engaging because they're constantly getting kicked off of their internet at home or don't have quality access in their home. But also providing some quiet learning spaces to access some organizational support or some distance learning navigation, which again, we hear from students and we hear from families where they just need that hands-on in-person support to help them kind of navigate Canvas and in-person learning and what that looks like. These next 2 weeks are targeted and intentional intervention support. It's not open for just drop-in. It's not going to be made available for every student. Our students who are doing well don't need to come in person. So we want to start slow. We want to start with some methodical, intentional returning. And so we're providing that opportunity for students, and we'll be reaching out to those students that we think need that over the course of these next 2 weeks with an invite. It will not be mandatory and it will not be required. None of it will take place during school instruction outside of the academy periods. And I'll show you in just a minute how we're going to navigate even the academy time. There needs to be a little bit of adjustment so that there's time for them to get to their classes. But it's going to be optional for students to return to get that support. And then what's in the blue is the continuation of what's already happening. Phase 3, we really see happening by the end of the month and beyond, moving us closer to a full hybrid return. And that will be the implementation of some co-curricular activities, which are extensions of the classroom. So this would be something like auto shop or wood shop, maybe even happening during that class period, the hands-on things that we know students aren't able to do, but coming back in these small groups, some specific extracurricular activities, so clubs, meeting during academy or after school, that sort of stuff, and then social or peer events. We already have one planned and lined up at the end of October. And then the blue is the continuation of phase 1 and phase 2 that you've already seen. The way we're going to offer these groups over the next 2 weeks at the moment are, as I mentioned, it's not going to happen during the school days, but that it will happen before school, which will be that 7:30 to 8:30 time. The reason we're ending at 8:30 is because we know some classes start at 9 and students will need time to get on to their asynchronous or synchronous learning that's still in distance learning. During academy, for those academies that are going to happen in person, we will adjust those hours to be from 8:30 to 9:30, again, to provide that half an hour time slot for the 10 o'clock class, the distance learning time to start. And then after school from 3:30 to 5:30, and then in the evening from 5 to 7. Not everything has to be in a 2-hour increment. It might be like an hour from 3:30 to 4:30, but we're going to hold that space during that time. So if your child is invited, or as this becomes more accessible for all students, when we say like after school or evening, those are the time frames that we're talking about. And then social events will only be held after school, and they could have adjusted hours. So social events might span that after school to evening. So something that's starting at, 3:30 and then goes to, 5:30 or 7, similar to like what we did for our ACA day, even though that was like a 2-hour window there. But we might like adjust those hours for some of those social events that might be happening after school. The phase in toward a switch to hybrid at the semester really allows the following. And this is the reason why we're doing this phase in approach and not just jumping straight into a hybrid model for this month. First and foremost, it's less disruption to student learning. So when I talked about some of how we're going to ground the discussion around students returning, again, it's about keeping students at the center. And while there might be multiple perspectives out there of what that looks like or what that means, we know that right now we're in the middle of our semester, and starting to bring students back now could have a really significant impact if there's teachers who can't return because they have a compromised immune system or whatever that reason might be, or a schedule change that might have to happen due to that. So it's less disruption for our students. It's significantly more complicated at a high school level than at an elementary school level because of the multiple classes and switches between teachers and what that really looks like. We know that there's going to be people who decide not to come back onto campus. And so this phase approach allows us to make sure we have the information that's necessary to really figure out who's returning and what that looks like, and really get a commitment for those who are going to return. And the slow introduction of bringing students back onto campus really helps us to refine what that's going to look like. This is new for all of us. And while you can say like, well, we're all going to, I just had to go to the dentist, a month ago or so ago, and they had a new system there and what it looked like. But that's one person coming in for a scheduled time slot, and we had really clear systems. But as we look at bringing larger groups of students back, in groups of 15 or 20 or whatever that's going to look like in these small groups, we want to make sure that everything is set to the standards outlined by County Health to be COVID compliant, so that we've removed desks from classrooms to make sure that everyone is 6 feet or more apart, and that we have systems in place for staff and students to do their own self-wellness checks, and that we have some procedures in place to monitor and make sure that people are healthy and able to return. And having this phased approach really allows us to have a manageable amount of students and staff returning in a way that we can make sure those systems work and are compliant with the COVID health protocol, so that we can continue to expand to get more and more back on our campus. And the in-person opportunities really allow us to address those who have the greatest need. So as we talked about, as we center the students, we know that there are students who will benefit from coming back. There's some who are thriving. I was talking with our wellness intake specialist who was sharing an article from a different school district, but it was really having some students share out about their experience on distance learning. And we know for some of our students, they are loving it, and this would be their preferred method of school. So we know, again, there's these multiple perspectives that we're holding, but we also recognize that there are some students who we really need to bring back in. They want to come back in. It's safe to bring them in, and that we can support them. And so we want to make sure that since we are now allowed, that we are bringing these students in who need that support. I'm not going to click on the link here for the sake of time, but it is there, and I'm happy to share this out. It'll be in the Dawn's in the recorded video, so people can Google and find this. But there is a guidance for schools and school-based programs to bring students back. And it's really specific in its direction for safety, distancing, cleaning, face covering requirements, and these guidelines to bring students back. So the decision, however, does lie on the local public health and then the school district to decide when to do that. We know at our district, when students and staff return, they're going to have to follow really strict safety precautions. They'll be required to wear masks at all times, and that physical distancing will be required. And that will be the case throughout their time on campus, including passing periods and brunch or lunch. So while students we know tend to congregate together, we're going to have people around helping to make sure that they keep that physical distance. We do have some systems that are rolling out now for students and staff to perform digital pre-screening, that they are symptom-free, and that they'll have to do that every day before coming onto campus. Currently, I believe it'll start next week. We'll start rolling this out for staff even during distance learning, so that the staff can build that habit of doing those pre-screen checks of making sure that they're clear. And as we return to hybrid, that this will be a requirement of everyone on our campus at the start of every day. And then all students and staff who come on campus will have to complete this community compact pledge to meet behavior expectations to ensure a safe campus. So we'll be really strict on that and have that be a requirement for those that are returning on campus. Again, we're centering ourselves around the health and safety of the individual and the collective as a community. And then the next steps for returning. You should all have received a survey from Aida Glemy, our Associate Superintendent of Curriculum and Instruction, and we are gathering that data about returning families to hybrid learning and at the interest of whether they're going to return or want to stay in distance learning. It is not the final commitment, but it does help us to plan for numbers of how many students are returning, and then making sure that we have small groups and can accommodate those groups in classrooms, given the COVID requirements for health and safety. And then we're in the process of examining the current hybrid model that was developed, getting some input from those who are experiencing it. No schools in the Bay Area have returned to hybrid yet, but there are schools obviously in the nation that have, and so trying to gather some of that input and data. And then we might need to do some redesign or make minor changes to better support the student learning and connection, obviously adhere to the student safety. And then our governing board meets on October 21st and will be addressing this in a discussion, and we'll consider a plan on that return to hybrid and what that looks like. So for those that are interested, I would imagine almost all of us interested of what that's going to be, that would be a great board meeting to tune into and listen to that discussion and what that's going to look like in terms of the next steps for returning. So, okay, that was a lot of me talking. I'm going to stop sharing for a minute here because I know there have been some questions that come in. I would imagine there might be some more questions as well as we talk, but I'd love to hear and answer any questions that are coming up about returning to a potential hybrid model and what it's looking like with this phased small group approach. So I guess I'll turn it over to those who have been monitoring it. So Chris,
Travis, the first question is to talk a little bit, if you can, about how the schedules might change for someone who is not going to return to campus. If a student decides to stay home, Will they be able to keep the same schedule, or might there need to be some adjustments there?
Yeah, so everything's a little bit in flux until we know what those numbers look like. So this is not like a guarantee of what this is going to look like. But if teachers are returning and teaching in person, they won't be able to manage then the synchronous online component while they're teaching in person. So again, depending on the numbers and what that looks like, there might need to be some switch of teachers or switch of when those classes are offered during what period in order to accommodate the full support for those students who are staying on distance learning. And the same would be true for those students who are returning. So we obviously our commitment and goal is to try to have as least disruption as possible to a student's schedule and to a teacher's schedule. But again, it all depends on numbers and what that's going to look like and the impact of those who can return. Additionally, there are some teachers, I mean, we have one on our campus who was out on leave last year for cancer treatment and is immunocompromised, but is able to come back and teach, during distance learning, but really her doctor's advice is that she should not be exposed to large numbers of people and wouldn't be able to return in a hybrid or full return at this point until COVID is resolved. And so that would impact then, what that teacher does, and then therefore some of that scheduling as well. So again, it's really fluid. I can't give a specific answer, but those are the things we have to solve and figure out as we look at this hybrid return approach.
There's another question, Travis, about like performing arts and shop classes and some of the more hands-on classes. Do you want to speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, so I did speak a little bit to that in terms of that's the co-curricular implementation. So as early as next week, if not the week following, we already have some plans to start bringing back some of those hands-on classes. At this point, it's optional for students and staff to return. It's not a requirement for these necessarily for these hands-on classes for students to return. However, I have the information of the teachers that are willing to return, and almost all of those teachers are like, get me back in the classroom with the students, because wood shop at home is not as effective as wood shop in a wood shop class. Auto shop at home, not as effective. And so they are wanting to return, and that's going to look like some of those extras, right? Because it's not happening during class. So that would be the before school or the after school to try to get some of that hands-on experience. And then as that solidifies, we might be able to offer, after the next couple of weeks of figuring out the process and the protocol, and depending on what we're able to do, to potentially offer during class time. But again, everything's a little bit in flux because we are taking this really thoughtful and intentional approach to returning. And at this point, none of it will be during class time. Powers, I know you had a question.
Yeah, can you talk a little bit about how we have updated our HVAC equipment, put in HEPA filters, that we've done that, but there's just some question asking if that's been handled and what we've done in regards to that.
Yes, we have updated our HVAC filters and they are HEPA compliant. So yeah, every classroom has that, and those run even when not in use. So it's constantly filtering the air, and I can't really speak to any more specifics other than that, because like that's the extent of my knowledge on that.
That's what it is.
We did. I know we had some. I know we had some parent club grants that came in for some smaller space air filters as well. So the grant committee hasn't met yet, but that might be a potential in some of those. I'm thinking of offices like our wellness coordinator, whose office has like no outside air window, and having something like that would flow. At this point, they wouldn't be meeting in there anyways, but as we move forward, having that available also.
Thank you.
And then any other questions that have come in on that?
I know that there was a question about fuel ed again. I'm not sure if that was.
Yeah, I'll just respond. At this point, we don't have any specific direction of what the continuation of distance learning will look like for those who aren't feeling comfortable returning. And that will be determined once we know the numbers. But we are committed to providing a high quality distance learning experience for those who aren't returning, just as we are committed to a high quality hybrid model for those who are returning.
Right, thank you. And that fuel ed is still on the table. There's not. We're moving forward with using fuel ed.
No, everything is nothing is settled yet. So it's not, yeah.
I'll make sure we're clear
for
on
those
it.
who don't know, fuel ed is an online option that we had prior to COVID even being a thing. But we don't have a specific online distance learning designated yet. That will all be determined based off of numbers of those who don't want to return for distance learning.
Thank you for that clarity, Travis.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, Travis, I think there are a couple more questions about kind of the specifics of the DL plan, but I think the truth is that we haven't nailed down the specifics yet, and that's still all kind of in flux and being discussed, right? For example, is there a chance for streaming where the teacher's teaching some kids live and the other kids are streaming in? Is that on the table, off the table? Those are the kind of questions I'm seeing now.
I think the answer is nothing's off the table, and everything is really going to be determined as we go in terms of how numbers, county health, following those procedures, and that's going to be a lot of that discussion at the board meeting. So for those interested in that, I think that's what we're really going to be hearing from the board on some updates for that. Anything else?
Like any lab classes? Have we just some feedback in regards to like chemistry or biology or living earth where students can come in and do some labs?
Again, at this point, none of it's required. So not every chem teacher or physics teacher is going to be back in the classroom, but we do have some science teachers that are interested in holding these small groups. And as I said, we're going to really start with being intentional on the need, based off of the need. So for those students who need that targeted intervention and support, we'll be bringing them in for that to happen. But I would imagine we're only a few weeks away from teachers offering some of those before school or after school labs for students that want to come in and get that sort of extra hands-on experience until we have a hybrid model in place. All right.
Great. Thanks, Travis.
Yeah, I think, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, great. Well, you can continue to submit the questions through the Q&A option here on the webinar, and we can return to that at the end of the Dawn's dialogue here. But I'm going to take over your screens again and then turn the mic over to Ms. Powers, who is going to be talking about some October cohort updates and then sharing out about our BIRT report as well.
Hi, everyone. Good morning. The first thing I wanted to talk to you about is our October cohorts. We had introduced to you last time. We met some very exciting opportunities we were going to have this month with Keith Hawkins, who's going to be here and helping us create some connection and building on community and supporting our staff and students at this time. For this Monday, we wanted to provide you with the information on what we will be doing with our students during that Monday cohort in the morning, but then also give you what some of our key messages and learning questions are going to be for the students. Because this could be an opportunity for you to dialogue with your students about it, but also I'm finding this could be a really great activity for you to do together as a family, to talk through it, to help everyone in the family deal with what's going on in our world right now. So the theme for Monday is what is permanent in our lives versus what is temporary in our lives. And the question is, how do we know what is temporary in our lives? And the response to that is we figure out what's temporary in our life once we know what's permanent. If we can have those foundational touch points of what's permanent in our life right now, then we can assess what is temporary. And it's hard to figure out what's temporary. The pandemic is temporary, but the things I'm learning about the pandemic in terms of hand sanitizer, washing hands, not that I never used those things before, that sounds terrible, but that these are things that are going to be part of our everyday life. So it's really figuring out that balance. The struggles with school, it is maybe it's temporary. So this is what we really want to dialogue with our students. Then we want to have further conversation. Keith, so Monday will be about a 10-minute video. And then on Wednesday, we will have Keith live on Zoom from 12:45 to 1:20. And we're going to talk about the permanent in our lives and how we can celebrate and focus on the permanent right now. And then various ways we can take care of our mental health. Wednesday's lunchtime meeting will be hosted by Keith Hawkins and our wellness coordinator, Alan Choi, and our wellness intake specialist, Casey Sassner. So we're excited to dialogue this and dive in a little bit deeper. The next slide gives you what we are asking students to do and is a really great activity that you can do with your family. So if we could go to the next slide. Travis. Thanks. Nope, too far. There we go. Key questions. So how can you do this together as a family? This is what we're going to ask our students to do on Monday, but I strongly encourage, take a picture of this right now, put it down, and then maybe do this together as a family. I did it with my 8-year-old and my 2 6-year-olds and my husband. It was awesome for us to really kind of ground that conversation, especially reflecting on what Travis's daughter shared about her feelings right now. But write a list of things in your life that are frustrating you, upsetting you, causing you anxiety. Then ask yourself, are these things permanent or temporary? For those that are temporary, what percentage of time and energy do you give those things? Are you spending too much time on the things in your life that are temporary? And then if you give too much attention to the temporary things in your life, how can you avoid getting caught up in the drama of those things? And what we really want to talk about as well is if you're giving too much time to the things that are temporary, they start to trickle into the permanent and then they stay there. So really create a T-chart, temporary, permanent on either side, and have some dialogue about this with your students. Help them see some things that are temporary and hold on to the things that are permanent for them. So that's our cohort this next Monday. And we encourage students to do some follow-up next Wednesday at lunch in the live session where Keith will be live there answering questions and our wellness coordinators. We're excited to do that and we're looking forward to the dialogue. There'll also be an opportunity for our cohort teachers to connect and dialogue with our students. Next thing I want to talk about is the bias incident monthly report. So we've spoken at our last few Dawn's dialogues about the bias incident reporting system that we have here at Akalani's and across our district. At the end of each month, we'll be providing a report and posting it on our website that lets our community know how many reports we've received, how they've been submitted, have they been anonymous. So we recently posted our August-September summary. Once we have October, we'll add that data in and then we'll update it as well. For Akalani's High School itself, we've had a total of 15 reports submitted. What I'd like to do is, if Travis, you could quickly click on monthly report just to show our parents and our families where this is. If you haven't had an opportunity to check out our website under About Us and an Equity Inclusion, there's a list of really great information here and an unbelievable video. I would like to make a shout out to our leadership students who are making it a focus to highlight our clubs, and started with BSU. And there's a wonderful video up there I encourage you to check out. But towards the bottom here, you'll see BIRT, Bias Incident Reporting Team, and then BIRT Data. And then from there is our monthly report link. You can click here and see all of our data. So if you scroll down, thank you, Travis. Right here, it gives us a total of number of reports, which is 15 so far. And then we broke it down by the types of reports we have received. So something what's important for you to know is that when somebody submits a report, they can choose between 3 options. They can choose for it to be a bias incident, a general concern, or that it can be an immediate safety concern. Some, as they report, are putting it as 2 of them, they're putting it as 1 of them, or all 3. So we really wanted to break this down so that you could see. So we show you here what reports have been only immediate, general, or bias, and then we give you a breakdown of the reports that have all of that have been combined. So if you keep scrolling down, Travis, we also share which reports have occurred online, which reports have occurred during the school day, and you'll notice here of the 15 reports, 14 of them have been online, and 10 of them have been during the school day. And then which bias reports have occurred outside of the school day, and then which ones have been reported as anonymous. And then if you scroll down, we have another chart here, just so that we can track these 3 categories. And then down below, it gives you responses. What have we done to respond as a site? And I want to reiterate, the goal of BIRT and the BIRT team is to take care of the reporter. Those that report, we want to take care of them, work with them, support them. They have given us this information, and so we within a BIRT team have created items and steps and protocols for us to take care of that reporter. In addition, if we do know the student that was involved in the incident itself, there may be discipline depending on the situation, but then there's also restorative practice. We want to make sure that it's not just the discipline piece, that there is dialogue and that there is conversation, and that there is an opportunity to restore within this process. And then at the bottom, it gives you a quick summary. You can also, thank you, Travis. You can also go to our district website. And I don't have the link on here, but our district website has an equity, a diversity, equity, and inclusion section as well. And on that website, you can actually see all 4 sites BIRT report. So you're able to see, and then there's also a compiled list of the district. So you're welcome to that. So that's our updated report. We will be I've already shared this with staff. We'll be communicating it with staff as well and updating our staff, and it is available on our website. The last thing, I don't know if Travis kept that slide in, but I'd love to quickly just share out one thing we are really excited about for next week is that we are starting a Women in Leadership series here at Akalani's, and we are starting that next Thursday night, October 22nd, and it will be at 7:30 p.m. This is an opportunity for us to come together and learn and listen to the women in our community, the women, maybe not even in our community, maybe women who have influence, leadership, and can come and talk and communicate with us. We are going to host for our first one, Kelly Galuska, who is a writer and executive producer and currently working for Netflix. She is married and has a 1-year-old daughter. So we're really excited to connect with her. We'd love to invite you, your daughters, your sons, whoever, to come in and start listening to this really great opportunity. And that is it.
Gotta unmute myself here. Thank you, Ms. Powers. I don't know if any questions came in about that, and we want to pause there before we move forward.
No questions directly about the BIRT procedure, not yet, no.
Okay, great. So I'm going to do a, whatever that expression is, like 30,000 foot, 50,000 foot overview of our California Healthy Kids survey. Again, it feels a little bit inconsequential, I guess, because if that's the right word, because this was administered to our students in the fall of 2019, and it is something that we offer every other year. We have our students take. It only is offered to 9th and 11th graders. So if you happen to have a 10th or 12th grader during that year, they'll never take the California Healthy Kids Survey. We just do our 9th and 11th graders. This is a survey that we've been administering since 99. It's a anonymous self-reporting survey that the students take. There is passive parental consent, meaning that parents have to opt their child out of taking it. So we do get most of our students who take it. And it provides some really important data for us to look at for our school and our community, specifically in regards to school connectedness, caring adults on campus, and then suicide ideation, student wellness and health, and then choices that students are making that might be risky behavior, such as alcohol and drug use. So here's a little blurb that I literally just clipped straight off of the California Healthy Kids survey website. But it's something that was started in 97, and it really is looking about how do we foster and help support a positive school climate, look at structures that we need to implement to reduce health risk behaviors that might get in the way of academic achievement, and promoting positive youth development, resiliency, and well-being. So I'm going to go through what I would say are kind of the most common requested data points from the survey. It's a 180 page long survey with lots of data that we can look at. And typically when I do this in our Don's dialogue, I look at 3-year trends. I'll compare us to the district and to the state wide, but just knowing that there was a lot on this agenda, I didn't want to bog us down with information from the survey. So I thought I would just kind of touch on the highlights, the high interest areas that you might be interested in as parents. And then my hope is that we can bring this back at a later Don's dialogue and really tap into some of the more in-depth look comparing to district and state data and looking at a 3-year trend of where we're at there. I do think having data just in isolation isn't as helpful because you can see a data point and not know the standard for that. So I did think it would be helpful for us to compare on you can see what our last scores were in the metric there. There's a lot of positive information that I'm about to share. It's not all positive. There are definitely points for us to work on, but we've been really targeting these areas. And so I think you'll see some of the positive impact that we've had over the last few years. The first area that we talk often about is in all of our school plans for student achievement is this idea of school connectedness. And the rating scale that you're seeing here is students who rate high on a school connectedness scale. They take data points from multiple factors, things like there's people who care about me at the school, purposeful engagement at the school. What are some of the other, I'm blanking on some of the specific terminology, but there's like 15 questions that they kind of take all of those Likert scales and then they calculate that together to get the score for our students. What's really awesome is from 2017 to 2019, we've had an increase in both grades on our school connectedness. You might know that that's the year we brought in Powers and Plant. So there's a correlation there, Ms. Powers and Mr. Plant. I'm just saying, throwing that out there. But I do think it has been.
I'll take it. Yeah.
It has been really targeted work from at the site administration level, the district administration level, down to the teachers and our student leaders on how are we fostering positive connections on our campus and really getting students connected to our campus. This is something worth celebrating. It's been lost in the year of 2020. Clearly, that's where we kind of feel like it's a little bit of a moot point with everything going on with COVID and distance learning, but it's still something to look at, celebrating that the achievement there and the increased connectedness there from 2017 to 2019. I wanted to show you just school connectedness by ethnicity. Again, this is something that it's really great to look at on a district-wide level as well. Because you'll notice that there are some empty cells here, which denotes that we have less than 10 respondents who identified that at the 9th and the 11th grade level. And the reason why they don't give us that data is because they are committed to keeping the report anonymous, and there's a concern that at less than 10, those students would be able to be identified. So they don't share the data points with us for less than 10 on that at that much of a breakdown level. However, again, things to point out and to notice is that there's an increase in some of our students of color from the School Connectedness at the 9th grade level. So again, it was 70% overall. And then at the 11th grade level, you're seeing the same thing, 63% overall with it kind of increased across the board. So again, that's something to know and to celebrate. The work is not done. We want to see this be 100%, but it is closer to, as we create goals around student connectedness, we can see ourselves getting closer to achieving the goal that we have. So that's a really great thing. The other thing that comes up often, and there's a lot of other categories about this, but there's a kind of general overall question about whether you feel safe or very safe at school. We want our students to feel safe or very safe. However, you'll notice that from 2017 to 2019, we pretty much flatlined. We flatlined at the 9th grade level, and then we actually had a decrease at the 11th grade level. I'll point back to what was happening in 2019, just coming back from the fall, the school shooting that happened, I believe, was that in the spring of 2019? And then we went into the fall of 2019, where we rolled out our Sandy Hook See Something, Say Something anonymous reporting app. So we had just rolled that out. We had just trained our students on how to identify things that might be unsafe on campus. And so that could have a factor in what's there. But we continue to want to create these metrics and measures for students to feel safe on our campus. And that's part of what the BIRT report is also doing, is providing a metric for students to feel safe and welcomed on our campus, and how can we step in and respond to make sure that happens. The other one that has a high interest is looking at our suicide ideation. So the phrasing for the students is something like, have I ever had thoughts of suicide over the past 12 months? And then it's, again, a scale there. And in 2017, that was 15 to 20%. And in 2019, we actually saw a decrease of 12 to 18%. So again, we know there's a correlation there with student connectedness. So it's not surprising that as student connection increases, suicide ideation will decrease. At a later Don's dialogue, I'd love to share more about the scale of feeling chronically sad or hopeless, I believe, or helpless. I can't remember what the word is, but we can look at that scale, which is another thing that we tend to look at. And then, of course, we know that vape use has been a high concern and thing that we've been trying to step in with our students. And unfortunately, we didn't see much difference between 2017 and 2019 with vape use. What I did not include on here that I would love to share at a later time, and again, I just didn't want to include too much information since we have so much that we're covering during this webinar. But what I did not include was the students' perception of the impact of vape use. And what is encouraging is that there's a question there about the harmful side effects of vape use, and if there is any. And students can say, like, yes, there's a really, really significant harmful impact, and it kind of goes down a scale. Where we had some concerns was seeing about 13 or 15% of our students say that there was zero harmful effects of vaping in 2017, and we saw that number decrease, meaning that more students are aware that there are harmful effects of vape use, and that's a good thing. So we want to continue to provide that vape education for our students, like anti-vape education. I don't know how to say that in a way. We're not promoting vaping, but how to provide that anti-vape education for our students so that they understand the harmful effects of vaping and then can make decisions that are promoting a healthy lifestyle. Again, so much of this feels moot because of COVID and the impacts that are there, but it's data points for you to know and to maybe even check in with your own students at home on where they fall in this. So that again is like, I just wanted to give a quick touch point of our California Healthy Kids Survey so that you have that. And then if time allows, I'd love to bring that back and do a more sort of in-depth share out of those data points, looking at the district-wide data and the state data. What I can tell you is that we have significantly better scores than the overall state average on things like connectedness, engagement, what are some of the feeling safe at school. But one area where we are underperforming at a state level is in vape use, that we have higher use of vape than statewide average. So, and we'll share that out at another Don's Dialogue. So I'm not sure if there's any other questions on that, but considering that our student rep is here to share out, I am going to turn it over. Oh, sorry, one more thing about the California Health. This is just kind of like some of our responses that have come out of the California Healthy Kids Survey in conjunction with the Stanford Survey of the Adolescent School Experience are some of these programs and support. Everything, I mean, I think our Wellness Center, namely, was a response to what we were seeing on the California Healthy Kids Survey. But then this is kind of like all of the things that we provide and do to try to help have, you know, a positive increase in response on that survey. So I can come back to that because I know we also have our student rep here, and I would love to make sure she's got a lot going on. So I would love to make sure that she can share out and then get to where she needs to go. And then we can come back to that during some of the Q&A. So go ahead and take it away. Let me know. I can just forward the slides for you. Okay.
Perfect, thank you. I got here a little early, but that's okay. So if you don't know me or weren't at the last meeting, I'm Annie Onikos. I'm a senior and the ASB Public Relations Officer. So just a few reminders before I get into the month of October. For students, we have clubs that are meeting weekly, and there's a club spreadsheet that Ms. Walton sends out weekly that you can get Zoom links and information on the clubs. So I would really encourage everyone to attend just like at least one club. I know that the clubs that I've attended have been going really well, and it's somewhat like sometimes it's easier to do it virtual just because you don't have to like physically go anywhere. You can eat lunch while you're there, do different things during lunch. So clubs are going well. And then we're also starting a Women in Leadership series. And it starts Thursday of next week, I believe. And her name is Kelly Galuska. I might be mispronouncing her last name wrong, but she's a writer and executive producer for Netflix. And so anyone can come and just listen to her talk about her challenges and successes and failures in Hollywood as she kind of starts and builds her career. And then we are kicking off October. So ACA stands for Akalani's Community Always. We're like halfway through it, but we have a really big Spirit Week at the end of October that ASB is putting on with the help of different boards in leadership, and we're calling it Wicked Week. And so I just have like a little calendar that I'm going to go through to make sure that you're informed on everything. So on Friday the 23rd, which is next week, the Tech Board and Leadership is releasing their communications video that has like all the information for the next month or so on events, and it's Halloween themed and it's going to be really fun. I know that they are filming part of it today, which is fun. And then there's also the canned food drive bins at the flagpole, so you can drop off cans there. And then the following Monday, we have cohort competitions in our academy cohorts, and Goose Chase begins. And so Goose Chase is an app that you can download on your phone, or you can access it on your computer, but it's basically like challenges that you can submit for points. And so we're trying to get cohorts more involved and like more connected. So some of the challenges are like fun things like take a selfie with your pet, and then other ones are like go to the drive-in movie for the Spirit Week, which we'll talk about. So just getting people involved and connected. And then we also have a Rallies Haunted Hallway. The Rallies board is putting on a walk-through haunted hallway that you can come to Monday night, and they're decorating the school, and there's going to be a pumpkin carving contest, and it's going to be really fun. So there's a Sign Up Genius that you can sign up to go walk through with your families. And then on Tuesday, we have a staff student bonding at lunch. It's going to be a Shark Tank activity where teachers and students are paired up and have to come up with an invention. And then the picture on the right is just me and one of our other ASB officers, Franny, in our video that we are kicking off on Monday. That's supposed to be really fun just to get people excited for the week. And then continuing on Wednesday, we have a dress up day. That's Franny and I dressed up for Wacky Wednesday. And then we have Live with Keith at lunch. I'm not sure if you guys know who Keith is, but he's a really cool speaker that we're introducing into cohorts. And we've had one live lunch with him already, and I think it went really well. It was fun to hear from him about his stories. And then we also have a drive-in family movie night at the Solano Drive-In at 7:10 on Wednesday night, which is going to be really fun. We find out the movie next week. I think they give it 2 weeks in advance. And you're advised to get there an hour early, but it's really fun. I'm excited to go, and it's for everyone. So bring your families and bring, your students. And then on Thursday, from 2 to 4, there's going to be Spiritware passed out at Akalani's if you bought Spiritware. And then there's also a tentative night in the park at Sideboard with Jazz Band. I'm not sure if it's going to if it's going to happen. It has to get approved still, but we're hoping it will, and it'll be a fun activity. And then lastly, on Friday, the dress up day is to recreate a childhood Halloween costume that you wore when you were little, and you can submit your dress up days on Goose Chase. And then there's a lunchtime boat race activity over Zoom and a rally recap video. And then just looking back on October, we had Aka Day on Thursday the 8th, and it was a drive-through day where students could come and pick up different stuff and see their class officers and staff. And so those are just a few photos from the day. And then the tech board and leadership also created a BSU documentary, which was really good. And if Mr. Bell wants to play the trailer or has time, it's like 30 seconds. But I would encourage all of you to watch the whole video.
Let me make sure, Anna, if you just give me a thumbs up when I play it, if you can hear the audio, okay?
Like growing up here, my dad would always warn me about like, the racism here and stuff.
While it is unfortunate that we need a movement to prove that our lives matter, I would say the Black Lives Matter movement has been one of the most educational and purposeful movements of my entire life.
If you keep on killing us, what do you expect? You expect us to just sit by and just not do anything?
Pissed off. I think they have a right to be. All the lives cannot be replaced.
Yeah, so the tech board worked really hard on that video. I think it's about 10 minutes. It's a really good video. And then they're also working on one with QSA coming soon, and they're trying to highlight those with different equity clubs. So I think, and then a real quick peek ahead into November. We have Care Week in mid-November, which focuses on equity and equity clubs. And I think that the diversity board this year is really focusing on having equity clubs run events each day at lunch. And then we also have a keynote speaker, Lori Hayes, who is coming to, and so I would encourage you all to listen to that as well. And then Adopt a Family is going to be happening during the holidays, and we'll have more details on that. And then the book club is reading Channel Kindness by Lady Gaga. And so books will be passed out to students in January, I believe. I'm not completely sure, but more information will come from Miss Walton on that.
Okay, awesome. Anna, thank you so much. Mr. Plant or Ms. Powers, did any questions come in?
Not specifically for Anna. Oh, maybe she knows the Kelly Galuska meeting. Are we going to record that? I would imagine so.
Yeah, the Women in Leadership. Yeah, that'll be recorded.
That's great.
Okay.
No other questions for Anna, no.
Thank you so much for taking time. We know you got a lot on your plate on a Friday, wrapping up the school week. And so really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you guys for having me.
All right, thank you. Bye. Okay, so we are going to, as we wrap up the our Dawn's Dialogue webinar, sorry about that. As we wrap up our Dawn's Dialogue webinar, we'll jump into a time for question and answer. And I'll stop sharing my screen here in just a minute, but I do want to share, we had one question that came in that was submitted in advance. There was obviously a few questions about the hybrid learning, but I hope that those were answered as I shared earlier. But there was a question about the distance learning policy for grading and in Canvas. It's actually a state requirement that there should be an update every 2 to 3 weeks of a student's grade. Those grades should all be reflected in Canvas. So if you're experiencing a significant amount of time lapsed between seeing grades being updated in Canvas, I would encourage you to reach out to your teacher, to that teacher, to ask for the grades to be updated so that you can get information on where your student stands in that class. And if you're having some issues with that or feel uncomfortable with that for whatever reason, to just tag in your student's associate principal, Mr. Plant or Ms. Powers, who can help navigate that conversation. But they should be updated and reflected every 2 to 3 weeks. The one caveat that I would add to that is we just finished our first quarter on this new learning management platform. And so there might have been some potential hiccups along the way of teachers thinking that grades were being publicly updated for the student and the parent to see. And we know there were some issues where that actually wasn't the case and it was only being done on the back end, which is why making sure that teachers know if you're not seeing that is going to be a really important step, both in the learning of this transition to Canvas, but then also making sure that you know how to step in and help support your student in that process there. Okay. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen here as we have about 10 minutes left and can answer any specific questions that have come up for people.
I got a couple for you, Travis. One is about posting in Canvas. It says what are the specifics on when teachers are supposed to post if something's due the next day? Yeah, that's the question.
Yeah, so assignments should be posted in a manner that allows an opportunity for students to ask questions on what those assignments might be. So for the asynchronous Mondays, that posting could happen anytime. I mean, they could schedule that post to happen right at the start of that class period for that Monday. They should all be available by the start of Monday's cohort or after the cohort so that they can access their asynchronous learning. And then for the classes that are happening during those block asynchronous or synchronous times, those postings should happen with that class period so that they have time to ask questions for any assignment that might be due the following class period or beyond. Great question. I know. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, there's another question about Canvas. It says, if a parent has a question about Canvas and the videos don't answer it, what's another way people can reach out for support?
Yeah, I would actually tap in Mr. Plant or Ms. Powers.
I was going to say.
Who can answer those questions. And then if more support is needed, we have some Canvas experts on site who we could bring into that conversation to ask some of those questions. I also think there's great resources in utilizing each other, other parents who are observers and what they're seeing and how they're best managing that. That's why we put out the video of Ms. Perlman, who shared both as a staff member and a parent, wanting our parents to see this is what it looks like on a parent end and how to navigate as a parent for that.
Yeah, and I'd be happy to have people just email me questions about them, and then either I know quite a lot about Canvas, so I can help, or I can reach out to our on-site experts. Travis, if you're able to kind of rewind a little bit here, there is a question about the Healthy Kids survey data, and if that's posted, is that survey results available somewhere? They're on the website. That's the question.
Yeah, they're not posted. Will be the full report. I'm not sure if it's actually publicly accessible or not. I'm happy to find out that answer, and I'm sorry that I don't know. If you Google California Healthy Kids Survey, I do believe that whatever's on the website is what we're publicly allowed to post. Although I'm happy to find out information. I'm sorry that I don't know. I know there was a question, and that's why you kind of see me multitasking here, about the specifics of student connectedness and the questions that are asked around that. And so I'm trying to find, I want to bring up the specifics so that you can actually know what's being asked there. Let me get to the student connectedness scale, and then I can bring up those specific things. But ask another question while I'm.
Well, the other question is, there's kind of a general theme of people saying, the district asked me whether I want to come back or not, but I can't really make that decision until I know exactly what the DL plan is. So I think maybe your reassurance that this first outreach was not the decision.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so this initial rollout is to give us preliminary data and numbers so that we can make a plan. And then once that's finalized, then you'll have the information that you need to actually make the best plan for yourself and your student based off of what that's going to look like. I will say the hybrid model, we don't anticipate dramatic changes to what was linked in Dr. Nickerson's email, which is why he chose to link that to the parent community, so you can see what that model is going to look like. However, in terms of the distance learning and the schedule impacts that might have, that's going to be based off of the teachers that return, the students that return, and the numbers to make sure that we can provide a safe return for all of our students. So, hey, I have some of the scores here. So the student connectedness scale takes into data the account of, it's a scale of like strongly disagree, neutral, agree, strongly agree, and then they take that data and they collate that into an average reporting of students who agree or strongly disagree. And it's a series of let's see, like 10 questions. So things like, I feel close to people at this school, I'm happy to be at this school, I feel like I'm part of this school, teachers at the school treat students fairly, I feel safe at school, I have strong adult connections at this school. So those are some of the questions, or there's a caring adult at the school. So those are some of the questions that they take those overall average and then put that into a percentages for a overall student connectedness scale. So for example, students who report, I'm happy to be at this school. And again, this is something like, if we have time to share more in depth, it's interesting to see some of this data, but our 9th graders, we had 74% marked that I'm happy to be at this school, either agree or strongly agree. And then 64% of our 11th graders said that they're happy to be at this school, either agree or strongly agree. So then they kind of take those averages to make that overall connection score. Great. Ms. Ketchum, Ms. LaBrosse, any other questions that have kind of come in or need to be addressed before we wrap up here?
Trying to unmute myself. No, I don't have any more. I don't see any more questions. We did get pinged from our community partners chair that we want to remind everybody that the Reservoir Run, I can't even say it, sign up for the Reservoir Run. It's starting today. first 100 students who sign up get free candy from Zuni's. So, and not to be too competitive, but we're beating Campo and Miramoni. So, I'm
going to actually promote her to panelist. So Kelly, I hope you're ready because you're coming over. But I think you were going to give a shout out about flying some ACA flags potentially. Okay, there, you didn't even know you were coming on board.
Wow, love surprises. Yes, so fly your flags, definitely. The flag that's currently behind Travis's head, go ahead and wear it as you're running through town. The run actually begins today, but registrations are continuing throughout the next 2 weeks. And you get a great t-shirt that was actually designed by an Akalani's parent, Betsy Streeter, go Dons. And yes, as Kristen mentioned, so we are, we still have room to continue to participate and for students to get free candy, the first 100 students. We are hovering at about 78 as of yesterday. And you can also sponsor someone. So if you want to sponsor a teacher or someone else at school, you can go ahead and do that. And yes, so the flags are for sale as a fundraiser, but it's also a community builder. And you can fly your flags throughout the next few weeks and show your spirit, and we appreciate it. Go Dons.
Absolutely. Well, Kelly, thanks for that update. I forgot that we had talked about, I think it was yesterday. It was like, hey, bring Kelly over to talk about wearing your flags in the run. And I would love to see just a series of flags flooding the street as people are doing the run. So
That'd be awesome.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. And then again, thank you all for joining us today. Again, we'll post this webinar. It'll be linked out through the APC newsletter. But appreciate you all being here and have a wonderful weekend.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.